When my daughter-in-law told me they'd gotten married yesterday, I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. Not from joy, from the sharp, cold realization that I hadn't been wanted there. "We got married yesterday," Lena said, her voice light, almost cheerful. "It was beautiful. Just us and the special people." Special people. I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, staring at the calendar on the wall. I'd circled next Saturday in red ink, the date Max had told me they were thinking about, the date I'd been holding my breath for. I'd already bought a navy dress with pearl buttons. I'd made an appointment at the salon. "Yesterday?" I repeated, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. It was perfect, Renate. Really intimate, you understand. I didn't understand. I couldn't speak. The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. "Anyway," Lena continued, filling the space with that bright, untroubled tone, "I just wanted to let you know, Max is at work, but he'll call you later, okay?" Quote. She hung up before I could respond. I set the phone down on the counter. My hands were shaking. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice, then stopped. The refrigerator hummed. The morning light came through the window in pale stripes, and everything looked exactly as it had 5 minutes ago, but something fundamental had shifted. My son had gotten married without me. Before this, I thought I understood my place in Max's life. I was his mother. His only parent since his father Otto passed 4 years ago. We'd been close, or at least, I'd believed we were. Max used to call me every Sunday. We'd talk about small things. His job at the engineering firm, the weather, what I was cooking for dinner. After Otto died, those calls became my anchor. They reminded me I wasn't entirely alone. Then he met Lena. It was 2.5 years ago. He brought her to dinner on a Tuesday evening, and I remember thinking how young she looked, 26 to his 31. She had straight blonde hair and a wide smile that showed all her teeth. She worked in marketing, she told me. She loved yoga. She was allergic to cats. I tried. I really did. I asked her questions. I made her favorite dessert, Black Forest cake, the next time they visited. When Max told me they were moving in together, I told him I was happy for him. "She makes me happy, Mom," he said, and his face had that soft, vulnerable look he used to have as a boy when he showed me a drawing he'd made. "Then that's all that matters," I told him. But things changed quickly after that. The calls became shorter, then less frequent. When I did see Max, Lena was always there, her hand on his arm, finishing his sentences. She had opinions about everything, where they should eat, what movie they should watch, whether I should repaint my living room walls. "That yellow is so dated," she said once, wrinkling her nose at the walls Otto and I had chosen together. "You should do gray, or maybe a soft white." I smiled and changed the subject. 6 months after they moved in together, Max called with news. "Mom, we need to talk about something." My stomach tightened. Those words never preceded anything good. "The rent in the city is killing us," he continued. "Lena's student loans are brutal, and my salary just isn't stretching far enough. We're thinking about moving back to a smaller place, maybe farther out." Quote, "How much is your rent?" I asked. $500 a month. It's a steal for the neighborhood, but with everything else. Quote, I thought about Otto's life insurance, the careful savings we'd accumulated. The retirement account I barely touched because I lived simply, in the house we'd paid off years ago. "I can help," I heard myself say. "Mom, we couldn't." $500 a month. "I can do that. Let me do that for you." There was a pause, then Max's voice, thick with relief. "Are you sure?" Quote, "You're my son," I said simply. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of $500 a month, transferred on the first of every month without fail. $18,000. But it wasn't just the rent. There was the furniture when they said their apartment was too empty. another $4,000 for a proper dining set, a couch, a bed frame. There were the groceries I'd bring when I visited, the check I wrote when Lena's car needed repairs, the money for their engagement party that I'd helped plan and host. I'd done the math once, late at night when I couldn't sleep, over $33,000 of Otto's legacy, of our future. Given freely, given with love, because Max was my son, and I wanted him to be happy. And now, standing in my kitchen with the phone silent in my hand, I understood what I'd actually been. Not a mother, not family, not special, a bank account. The rest of that day passed in a fog. I moved through my house like a ghost, picking up objects and setting them down without seeing them. I made tea I didn't drink. I opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents without knowing what I was looking for. At some point, I found myself in Max's old bedroom. I hadn't changed it much since he moved out. His swimming trophies still lined the shelf above his desk. The curtains, dark blue with tiny stars, were the ones he'd picked when he was 12. I sat on the edge of his bed, the mattress creaking under my weight, and looked at a framed photograph on the nightstand. Max at 18, graduating from high school. Otto beside him, hand on his shoulder, both of them grinning. I'd taken the picture. I remembered the pride in Otto's eyes, the way he'd said, "That's my boy." I picked up the frame, traced my finger over Otto's face. "What would you tell me to do?" I whispered. But Otto wasn't here. He'd never know his son had gotten married. He'd never know his son had chosen not to invite his own mother. My phone rang at 7:30 that evening. Max's name lit up the screen. I stared at it through 4 rings before I answered. "Hi, Mom." His voice sounded careful, controlled. "Lena said she talked to you." "Yes. So, yeah, we got married, yesterday, at the courthouse." "I see. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing, very small. We didn't want a big fuss." I waited. He would explain, I thought. He would apologize. He would say something that would make this make sense. "You're not saying anything," he said finally. "What would you like me to say, Max?" Quote. "I don't know. Congratulations, maybe?" Quote. The word felt like a slap. I closed my eyes. "Congratulations," I said quietly. "Mom, don't be like that. You know how it is. Weddings are stressful. Everyone has opinions. We just wanted it to be about us, you know?" Quote. "Who was there?" Quote. "What?" Quote. "At your wedding, who was there?" Quote. He hesitated. "Lena's parents, her sister, a couple of our friends. Like I said, very small." Quote. "But not me. Mom, 3 years, Max. 3 years I've been helping you, every month. Every time you needed something. And we appreciate that. Do you?" My voice cracked. "Do you appreciate it? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to watch you get married. That's not fair." "You're right," I said, and I heard the bitterness in my own voice. "Nothing about this is fair. We'll have a party later, okay? A reception. You can come to that." "A reception?" I laughed, but it came out wrong, hollow. "How kind of you. Why are you being like this?" Quote. "I'm your mother, Max." "I know that." "Do you? Because right now, I feel like I'm just someone who sends you money every month." "That's ridiculous." His tone had shifted now, defensive, almost angry. "You're being dramatic." Dramatic. Otto used to say that too, when I got emotional. It was a word men used when they didn't want to deal with feelings. "I need to go," I said. "Mom, wait." I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I set the phone face down on the table and walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, drank it, standing at the sink, staring out at the darkening backyard. The oak tree Otto had planted when Max was born swayed in the evening breeze, its leaves rustling like whispered secrets. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every interaction from the past 3 years. Seeing them differently now. The way Lena always seemed to steer Max away when I tried to have a private conversation with him. The way my calls went to voicemail more and more often. The way they'd stopped inviting me to their apartment, always meeting at restaurants instead, on neutral ground. The way Lena had said special people, with that particular emphasis, as if she wanted me to feel the exclusion. By morning, something had hardened inside me. Not anger exactly, something colder, clearer. I understood now. The following Tuesday, I went to the bank. I sat across from Mr. Peterson, the manager who'd helped me set up Otto's accounts after he passed. "I need to look at my automatic transfers," I told him. He pulled up my account on his computer screen, turned it so I could see. There it was. Max Richter, $500. 00, scheduled for the 1st of every month. "Can I cancel this?" I asked. "Of course. Is everything all right, Mrs. Richter?" Quote. "Everything's fine," I lied. "I just need to make some changes." Quote. "But I didn't cancel it. Not yet." I sat with my finger hovering over the button, and I couldn't do it. He was still my son. Despite everything, he was still my son. I thanked Mr. Peterson and left. That was Wednesday. On Thursday, exactly 1 week after learning about the wedding, my phone rang. Lena's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, or maybe something darker, made me pick up. "Renate, hi." Her voice was bright, but I could hear the tension underneath. "How are you?" Quote. "I'm well, Lena. Congratulations on your marriage." "Oh, thank you. Listen, I'm calling because there's a tiny little problem. The rent is due tomorrow, and we haven't seen the transfer come through yet. I know it usually posts by now." My heart began to beat faster. Here it was. "The transfer," I repeated. "Right. $500? It usually comes through by the 28th, but it's the 30th now, so I just wanted to make sure everything's okay on your end." I looked out my window. A bird, a cardinal, bright red against the gray morning, landed on my fence post. "Lena," I said slowly, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" Quote. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost see her face, the way her smile would freeze, the way her eyes would narrow as she processed what I'd just said, her own words, thrown back at her like stones. "I'm sorry?" Her voice had lost its brightness. "Special people?" I repeated, keeping my tone even, almost pleasant. "Those were your words, weren't they? When you told me about the wedding. You said you only invited special people." "Renate, that's not. I didn't mean." "I've been thinking about it all week," I continued, and I was surprised by how steady I sounded. "And I've realized you're absolutely right. We should only invest our time and money in special people. People who value us. People who include us in the important moments of their lives. This is about the wedding." Her voice had gone hard now, the mask slipping. "You're punishing us because of the wedding." "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply taking your advice. Max said you were upset, but I told him you'd understand. I told him you were reasonable." Reasonable. Another word that meant quiet, compliant, convenient. "The rent, Lena? You'll need to handle it yourselves from now on. You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious. We're counting on that money. We have a lease. We have obligations." "So do I said, "and my obligation is to myself." Quote. "Max will call you. He'll straighten this out." Quote. "He's welcome to try." I hung up before she could respond. My hands weren't shaking this time. I felt calm, clear, like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years and had finally exhaled. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail. It rang 4 more times over the next hour. I ignored each call. At 2 in the afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I knew who it would be before I looked through the peephole. Max stood on my porch, his jaw tight, his hands shoved in his pockets. Lena was beside him, her arms crossed, her expression thunderous. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "Mom! What the hell?" Max's voice was sharp, angry in a way I'd rarely heard. "Lena just told me what you said. About the rent." I meant every word. Quote, "You're seriously cutting us off because we didn't invite you to the courthouse? That's insane." "Insane," I repeated softly. "That's a strong word, Max. What else would you call it? We've been relying on that money for 3 years. You can't just stop." Quote, "I can, actually. It's my money." Quote, Lena stepped forward. "We thought you cared about Max. We thought you wanted to help him." "I did help him, for 3 years. $18,000 in rent alone, another $15,000 in furniture, groceries, repairs, parties. Over $33,000, Lena. Money my husband saved for our retirement. Money I could have used for myself." Quote, "Nobody forced you to give it to us," Lena shot back. "You're right. Nobody forced me. I gave it freely because I loved my son, because I thought I was part of his life. But apparently I was wrong about that." Max's face had gone red. "This is emotional blackmail." "No, Max. Emotional blackmail is what you've been doing to me. Letting me pay for your life while slowly cutting me out of it. Taking my money while treating me like an inconvenience." "That's not true. When was the last time you called me without wanting something?" Quote, he opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Fine." Lena's voice was ice. "Fine, we'll figure it out ourselves. We don't need your money." Quote, "Good, I'm glad to hear it." Quote, "But don't expect us to come running back when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you." The words hung in the air like poison. Max didn't contradict her. He didn't tell her she'd gone too far. He just stood there, staring at me with something that looked like resentment. "I'll take my chances," I said. I closed the door in their faces. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they'd be angry for a while, then move on. Maybe eventually we'd find a way to repair things. Or maybe we wouldn't. But at least I'd have my dignity. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, they came back. But this time, they weren't alone. I was in the garden pulling weeds from around the roses when I heard a car pull into my driveway, then another. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees, and saw Max getting out of his sedan. Lena emerged from the passenger side. From the second car, a black BMW I didn't recognize, a man in a gray suit stepped out. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a leather briefcase. Something cold settled in my stomach. They walked up to my door together. The man in the suit knocked. 3 sharp raps that sounded somehow official. I opened the door slowly. "Mrs. Richter?" the man said, extending his hand. "My name is Klaus Fischer. I'm a family law attorney." I didn't take his hand. I looked at Max. "What is this?" Quote, "Mom, we need to talk." Max's voice was different now, softer, almost gentle, but with something calculated underneath. "Can we come in?" Quote, every instinct told me to say no, but I stepped aside, and they filed into my living room, my space, my home, and suddenly it felt invaded. Mr. Fisher sat in Otto's chair. Max and Lena took the couch. I remained standing. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Fisher began, setting his briefcase on the coffee table, "your son has come to me with some concerns about your recent behavior." "My behavior?" "Yes. The sudden withdrawal of financial support. The irrational response to a simple family event. Max and Lena are worried about your mental state." The room tilted slightly. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. My mental state, I repeated slowly. Yes. Mr. Fisher opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. They're concerned that you may not be capable of managing your financial affairs. That perhaps the stress of living alone, combined with your age, may be affecting your judgment. I stared at Max. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm 63 years old, I said. I manage my household, pay my bills on time, maintain my property. What exactly about that suggests incompetence? Quote, "It's not about capability, Mom." Max finally looked at me, and his expression was practiced, concerned, earnest, the way you'd look at a confused elderly person. It's about these sudden changes, cutting us off without warning, getting angry over nothing. It's not like you. Not like me, I repeated. You mean it's not convenient for you? Lena leaned forward, her voice soft, almost syrupy. Renat, for family, we just want what's best for you. If you're struggling, if the finances are becoming too much to handle alone, there's no shame in getting help. The picture became crystal clear in that moment. The lawyer. The concerned faces. The careful language about mental competence. They wanted control of my money. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. You didn't invite me to your wedding. You told me I wasn't special enough. And now, because I've stopped funding your lifestyle, you've brought a lawyer to my home to have me declared incompetent? Quote, "Nobody's using that word," Max started. "But that's what this is, isn't it?" I turned to Mr. Fisher. "That's why you're here. To declare me mentally unfit, so my son can take control of my finances." Mr. Fisher adjusted his glasses. In cases where elderly individuals make erratic financial decisions, it's sometimes necessary for family members to step in. For the individual's own protection. Erratic decisions, like stopping payments to my adult son who excluded me from his wedding. Like suddenly changing established patterns of behavior, Mr. Fisher corrected. Your son tells me you've been supporting them reliably for 3 years. This sudden withdrawal, combined with your hostile reaction to their marriage, suggests possible cognitive decline. Cognitive decline, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is remarkable, truly remarkable. Mom, please. Max stood up. We're not trying to attack you, we're trying to help. Help, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Quote. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a document. We just need you to sign this. It gives me power of attorney. Just in case. Just so someone can help you if you need it. Quote. I took the document from his hand. It was several pages long, dense with legal language. I skimmed the first page and saw the words. Grants full authority over financial accounts, real property, and investment decisions. Full authority. Everything Otto and I had built. Everything we'd saved. The house we'd bought in 1987 when Max was just a baby. The retirement account Otto had contributed to for 35 years. The life insurance that was supposed to see me through my old age. They wanted all of it. No, I said. Mom? No. I tore the document in half, then in half again. The sound of ripping paper was sharp in the quiet room. I let the pieces fall to the floor like snow. Lena shot to her feet. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you just did? Quote, I do, actually. I just refuse to hand over control of my life to people who view me as an obstacle between them and an inheritance. That's not what this is. Max's face had gone pale. Isn't it? I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had my eyes, Otto's chin, who'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway outside, who'd cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart. Tell me honestly, Max, when did you stop seeing me as your mother and start seeing me as a bank account? Quote, That's not fair. When did it happen? Was it when you met Lena? Or before that? Was it when your father died and you realized there was money? Quote, "We're not having this conversation," Lena said sharply. She turned to Mr. Fisher. "Is there another way to do this without her consent?" Quote, Mr. Fisher's expression was carefully neutral. "We could petition the court for guardianship, but we'd need medical evidence of incapacity, a doctor's evaluation, documentation of concerning behavior." "I'm standing right here," I said, "listening to you discuss how to steal my autonomy, and you think I'm the one who's confused?" Quote, Mr. Fisher stood, closing his briefcase. "Mrs. Richter, I strongly suggest you reconsider. Your son is only trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? From making my own decisions? From saying no to people who use me?" Quote, "From yourself," Lena snapped. "You're a bitter old woman who's alone because you drive everyone away. Max is the only one who still cares about you, and this is how you treat him?" Quote, the words should have hurt. Maybe once they would have. But standing in my living room, surrounded by people who'd walked in with a lawyer and a plan to take everything from me, I felt nothing but clarity. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom," Max began, "get out of my house, all of you, now." "You're making a mistake," Mr. Fisher said, picking up his briefcase. "A serious mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing this sooner. I walked to the front door and opened it. Leave." Lena stormed past me without a word. Mr. Fisher followed, his face impassive. Max stopped in the doorway, turned back. "I'm your son," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "Yes," I said, "and I will always love you, but I won't let you destroy me." "We'll be back," he said. It wasn't a threat, exactly. More like a promise. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I closed the door and locked it. Through the window, I watched them get into their cars. Watched them drive away. Then I picked up the phone. The lawyer's name was Herman Weber. I found him through a friend from my book club whose daughter had used him for an estate dispute. He had an office downtown, on the third floor of a building that smelled like old wood and lemon polish. "Tell me everything," he said, settling back in his chair, a yellow legal pad in front of him. So I did. I told him about the 3 years of payments. About the wedding I wasn't invited to. About the lawyer in my living room and the power of attorney documents I'd torn up. I told him everything, and as I spoke, I watched his expression shift from polite attention to something harder. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, tapping his pen against the pad. "Mrs. Richter," he said finally, "what your son and daughter-in-law attempted is called elder financial abuse. It's a serious matter. They brought a lawyer to your home to pressure you into signing away your rights while implying you were mentally incompetent. That's coercion. Can they try again? Go to court like that man suggested?" Quote, "They can try, but they'd need proof. Medical records, documented incidents, testimony from doctors or caregivers. From what you've told me, you're perfectly capable. You manage your own household, handle your finances, make rational decisions. A judge would see through their attempt immediately." Relief washed over me, so strong I felt dizzy. So I'm safe. For now. But I'd recommend we take some precautions. He leaned forward. "First, I want you to get a full medical evaluation, physical and cognitive. Not because I doubt your capacity, but because we want documentation that proves you're sound. Second, we need to lock down your accounts, make sure they can't access anything. Third, I'd suggest changing your locks and installing a security system if you don't have one. You think they'll come back? I think desperate people do desperate things, and your son and his wife sound desperate. Over the next 2 weeks, I did everything Mr. Weber suggested. Dr. Hartman, my physician for 15 years, did a full workup. Blood tests, cognitive screening, memory tests. He seemed puzzled by the request until I explained what had happened. "Renat, you're in excellent health for 63, he said, signing the evaluation form. "Mentally sharp, physically active. If your son tries to claim otherwise, I'll testify to that in court." I visited the bank again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I canceled the automatic transfer. I closed Max's access to any accounts we'd shared. I changed all my passwords and security questions. Mr. Peterson watched me with concerned eyes. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Richter?" Quote. "Completely sure." Quote. I called a locksmith. A young man named Thomas came that afternoon and changed every lock on the house: front door, back door, the door from the garage. He gave me 3 copies of each key. I put one set in my purse, one in a drawer, and mailed the third to my sister Deanna in Hamburg. The security company came 2 days later. Cameras for the front and back doors. Motion sensors. A keypad by the entrance. The installer, a woman named Claudia, showed me how to arm and disarm the system, how to check the camera feeds on my phone. "You'll get an alert if anyone approaches the property," she said. "And if you press this panic button, police are dispatched immediately." I looked at the small red button on the keypad. It seemed excessive, paranoid. But I thought of Lena's face when she'd asked Mr. Fisher about doing this without my consent, and I left the panic button where it was. On a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after I'd thrown them out, I did something I hadn't done in months. I looked at myself, really looked, in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired. Gray roots showed in my dark hair. My clothes were practical but shapeless, the uniform of someone who'd stopped caring how she looked because there was no one to look good for. When had that happened? I thought about the years after Otto died, the slow withdrawal from life, the way I'd made Max and Lena my whole world because I was afraid of having no world at all. "No more," I said to my reflection. I called my sister. Diana was 3 years older than me, living in Hamburg with her husband, Klaus. We talked every month, but I hadn't told her about Max. I hadn't wanted to admit what was happening. "Renate, is everything all right?" Her voice crackled slightly over the line. "No," I said. "It's not, but I need to tell you something." I told her everything. She listened in silence until I finished. "That little bastard," she said finally, her voice shaking with anger. "After everything you've done for him, Otto would be heartbroken. Otto would probably tell me I was being too emotional," I said, trying to smile. "Otto would be wrong. You did the right thing, throwing them out. But, Renate, are you okay? Really?" Quote. I thought about that question. Was I okay? "I'm lonely," I admitted. "I'm hurt. But I'm also free. For the first time in years, I'm making decisions for myself. And that feels good. Come visit us," Diana said immediately. "Stay for a week, a month, however long you need. Maybe I will." After I hung up, I drove to the salon, the same one where I'd made an appointment for Max's wedding, the wedding that had happened without me. "I want something different," I told the stylist, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair. "Something that doesn't look like I've given up." She smiled. "I can work with that." 2 hours later, I walked out with properly colored hair, shaped and styled. I stopped at a department store and bought 3 new outfits. Not the shapeless cardigans I'd been wearing, but clothes with structure, color, life. When I got home, I barely recognized myself in the hall mirror. I looked like someone who existed. Someone who mattered. That evening, my neighbor Eleanor Brooks knocked on my door. She was 71, a widow like me, with white hair she wore in a neat bun and a fondness for bird watching. "Renate, I wanted to check on you," she said. "I saw the locksmith here. And the security company. Is everything all right?" Quote. I'd always kept my distance from Eleanor, polite waves across the fence, nothing more. But standing in my doorway, looking at her concerned face, I made a decision. "Would you like to come in for tea?" I asked. Her face brightened. "I'd love to." Quote. We sat in my kitchen, the evening light slanting through the windows, and I told her an abbreviated version of what had happened. She listened, her teacup cradled in her hands. "My son tried something similar," she said quietly when I finished. 7 years ago. He wanted me to sell this house, move into a home, let him manage the proceeds. I refused, and he didn't speak to me for 2 years. What happened? Quote, "Eventually he apologized, realized what he'd done. We have a relationship now, but it's different, careful. I trust him, but not the way I used to. Do you regret standing your ground?" Quote. She looked at me steadily. "Never, not once, because if I'd given in, I'd have lost myself. And what good is a relationship if you have to disappear to maintain it?" Quote. The security system proved its worth sooner than I expected. It was a Saturday afternoon, 4 weeks after the lawyer incident. I was in the kitchen, making soup, potato, and leek, Otto's favorite, when my phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected at front door. I opened the app Claudia had installed. The camera feed showed my front porch in clear detail. Max and Lena stood there. But they weren't alone. There were 2 other people with them, a man and a woman, both in their 50s. The man wore khakis and a polo shirt. The woman had short gray hair and carried a clipboard. My heart began to pound. The doorbell rang. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I didn't move. "Mom." Max's voice came through the door, muffled but audible. "Mom, we know you're home. Your car is in the driveway. We just want to talk." I watched them on the screen. Lena said something to the woman with the clipboard. The woman nodded and made a note. They weren't leaving. Max pounded on the door now. "Mom, please, just open the door. 5 minutes. That's all we're asking." My hand hovered over my phone. I could call Mr. Weber. I could call the police. But something made me wait, watching them through the camera, trying to understand what was happening. The woman with the clipboard stepped forward and knocked. A professional, measured knock. "Mrs. Richter? My name is Dr. Schneider. I'm a geriatric psychiatrist. Your son has asked me to conduct a wellness check. If you could just open the door, we can have a brief conversation and clear this all up." A psychiatrist. They'd brought a psychiatrist to my house. "We're concerned about you," the woman continued. Her voice was calm, practiced. The voice of someone used to dealing with confused elderly people. "Your son tells me you've been isolating yourself, making unusual financial decisions. We just want to make sure you're safe." "Mom, please," Max's voice cracked. "We're trying to help you." I looked at the 4 of them standing on my porch, Max with his concerned son expression, Lena with her arms crossed, impatient. The man I didn't recognize, probably another lawyer or some kind of social worker. And Dr. Schneider with her clipboard, ready to document my incompetence. They'd planned this, coordinated it, brought witnesses who could testify that I'd refused help, isolated myself, acted paranoid. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. Desperate people do desperate things. I called Mr. Weber. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Richter?" Quote. "They're here, my son, his wife. They brought a psychiatrist and someone else. They're demanding I let them in." "Don't open the door. Don't engage with them at all. I'm going to call the police right now and report a harassment situation. You have a right to refuse entry to your property. They'll say I'm being paranoid, unstable. They can say whatever they want. You have documentation of your mental competence. You have a lawyer. And you have the right to refuse unwanted visitors. I'll call you right back." He hung up. The pounding on the door grew louder. "Mom!" Max's voice was angry now. "This is ridiculous! Open the damn door!" Quote. "Mrs. Richter," Dr. Schneider again, "if you refuse to cooperate, I'll have no choice but to document this as a concerning incident. Your refusal to engage could be interpreted as evidence of cognitive decline." The threat was clear. Open the door and submit to their evaluation, or they'd use my refusal against me. I pressed the intercom button on the security panel. My voice transmitted through a small speaker by the door. I have a lawyer, I said, keeping my voice steady. His name is Herman Weber. If you have concerns about my well-being, you can contact him, but I'm not opening this door. There was silence. Then Lena's voice, sharp and clear. See? She's installed security systems. Changed all the locks. She's paranoid. This is exactly what we've been talking about. Mrs. Richter, Dr. Schneider said, installing security in response to family members trying to help you is a concerning sign. Can you explain why you feel you need protection from your own son? Quote, because 3 weeks ago, he brought a lawyer here and tried to pressure me into signing away power of attorney. Because he and his wife excluded me from their wedding after I spent 3 years supporting them financially. Because they view me as an obstacle to an inheritance, not as a person. That's not true, Max shouted. We've been nothing but patient with you. Quote, patient, I repeated through the intercom. Is that what you call it? Quote, my phone buzzed. Mr. Weber calling back. The police are on their way, he said. 5 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone except uniformed officers. Thank you. Renate, listen to me. This is intimidation. They're trying to create a paper trail that makes you look unstable. Stay calm, stay inside, let the police handle it. Quote, through the camera, I watched Dr. Schneider make notes on her clipboard. Long, detailed notes. The man in khakis had his phone out, appearing to record the front of my house. She won't even come to the door, Lena said loudly, clearly for the recording. She's barricaded herself inside. This isn't normal behavior. Actually, a new voice said from off-camera, it seems perfectly normal to me. Eleanor Brooks stepped into the frame. She must have seen them from her house and come over. Who are you? Lena demanded. I'm her neighbor, Eleanor Brooks, and I've known Renate for 5 years. There's nothing wrong with her mind. This is a private family matter, Max said. It stopped being private when you brought a circus to her doorstep. Eleanor positioned herself between my door and the group, her small frame somehow commanding. She has the right to refuse visitors. She has the right to protect herself. And frankly, if my son showed up with a psychiatrist and a camera, I'd lock my doors too. Quote, you don't know what you're talking about, Lena snapped. I know harassment when I see it. Quote, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Max's face went pale. Mom, please, before the police get here, just talk to us. She doesn't want to talk to you, Eleanor said firmly, and she doesn't have to. 2 police cars pulled up to the curb. 4 officers got out. 2 men, 2 women, all in uniform. Through the intercom, I said, officers, I'm the homeowner. I'm inside by choice. These people are on my property without permission. I want them to leave. The senior officer, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes, approached the porch. Sir, ma'am, we're going to need you to step back from the door. Officer, I'm her son, Max said, his tone shifting to reasonable, concerned. We're worried about her. She's been acting strangely, refusing help. We brought a doctor to evaluate her. Did she request this evaluation? The sergeant asked. No, but then you're trespassing. All of you, step off the property now. This is absurd, Lena's voice rose. She's obviously unwell. Look at the security cameras, the locks. She's paranoid. Quote, ma'am, the sergeant said, her voice hardening, securing one's home is not evidence of mental illness. It's common sense. Now I'm asking you one more time to leave this property. We have a right to check on her well-being, Max insisted. You have no such right. She's a competent adult who's made it clear she doesn't want you here. The sergeant gestured to her officers. Escort them to their vehicles, please. This is a mistake, Dr. Schneider said, putting away her clipboard. I'm a licensed psychiatrist. I have concerns about this woman's capacity. Then file a formal petition with the court, the sergeant interrupted. But you can't conduct evaluations on people who don't consent? That's not how this works. Quote, I watched through the camera as the officers walked Max, Lena, and their companions back to their cars. Max kept turning back, his face twisted with frustration. Lena was talking rapidly, gesturing. Dr. Schneider looked annoyed, professional facade cracking. The man with the camera was still recording everything. Eleanor remained on my porch, arms crossed, watching until all 3 cars pulled away. Only then did I open the door. "Thank you," I said quietly. Eleanor turned to me, and I saw something fierce in her eyes. That was despicable, absolutely despicable. The sergeant approached. "Mrs. Richter? I'm Sergeant Muller. Are you all right?" Quote, "Yes, thank you for coming. Your lawyer called it in. Mr. Weber." He explained the situation. She pulled out a notepad. "This is the 2nd incident of harassment?" Quote, "3rd, actually. First, they showed up demanding I continue financial support. Then they came with a lawyer trying to get power of attorney. Now this." She made notes. "I'm going to file a report. I'd also recommend you consider a restraining order. If they come back again, it could escalate." "A restraining order against my own son," I said softly. "I know it's not easy, but sometimes family is where we need the most protection." She handed me a card. "Call this number if they return. Don't engage, don't open the door, just call." Quote. After she left, Eleanor and I stood on the porch in the fading afternoon light. "Come to my house," she said. "You shouldn't be alone right now." "I'm fine." "Renate." She took my hand, her skin papery but warm. "Come to my house. I made too much stew anyway." Quote. Eleanor's home was like stepping into a different world. Every surface held books, plants, small treasures collected over a lifetime. Photographs lined the mantel. Children, grandchildren, a handsome man in a military uniform who must have been her late husband. We ate stew at her small kitchen table while her cat, a massive orange tabby named Friedrich, watched from the windowsill. "How long before they come back?" Eleanor asked. "I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe today was enough to scare them off." Quote. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe that any more than I did. "What are they really after?" she asked. "Just money?" Quote. "Money, the house. Control." I pushed the stew around my bowl. Lena told me once I'd be alone when I was old and needed care. She was threatening me, saying they wouldn't help if I didn't do what they wanted. And she was right, in a way. You are alone. The word stung, but Eleanor wasn't being cruel, just honest. "Yes," I admitted. "I am. But there's a difference between being alone because you have no choice and being alone because you've chosen your dignity over toxicity." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not abandoned, Renate. You made a choice. A hard one. A brave one." "It doesn't feel brave. It feels lonely." "Of course it does, because you loved him. You probably still do. But love doesn't mean letting people destroy you." We sat in silence for a moment. Friedrich jumped down from the windowsill and wound between our chairs, purring. "My son came around eventually," Eleanor said. "But it took time. And it took me being absolutely immovable. I told him, 'I love you, but I will not negotiate my personhood. Either you see me as a human being with autonomy, or we have nothing to talk about.'" "How long?" Quote. 2 years. 2 years of birthday cards he didn't answer, Christmas gifts he didn't acknowledge. And then one day, he showed up on my doorstep and said, "Mom, I'm sorry," and I believed him. What if Max never comes to that? Quote. Eleanor's eyes were sad but clear. "Then he never does, and you survive anyway, because you're stronger than you think." Quote. That night, back in my own house, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like someone at the window. At 2 a.m, I got up and went to Max's old room. The trophies still gleamed in the moonlight. The photograph of him and Otto still sat on the nightstand. I picked it up, looked at my son's 18-year-old face, so full of hope and potential. "Where did I lose you?" I whispered. But I knew the answer. I hadn't lost him. He'd made choices. One choice after another, each one leading him further from the values Otto and I had tried to teach him. And somewhere along the way, he'd decided that money mattered more than integrity, that inheritance was worth more than relationship. Or maybe Lena had decided that, and Max had simply gone along. It didn't matter now. The result was the same. I set the photograph face down on the nightstand, not out of anger, out of acceptance. The boy in that picture didn't exist anymore, and the man he'd become wasn't someone I could help or save or change. He was going to make his choices, and I was going to make mine, and my choice was to survive this with my dignity intact. 3 days later, Mr. Weber called. "They've filed a petition," he said without preamble, "for guardianship, claiming you're mentally incompetent due to age-related cognitive decline." My stomach dropped. "But the evaluation—" "I know. We have Dr. Hartman's report. We have your bank statements showing consistent, rational management of funds. We have the police reports documenting their harassment, but they've found a different psychiatrist, Drive. Schneider, the one who came to your house, who's written a statement saying your refusal to cooperate with evaluation is itself evidence of impaired judgment." That's insane. It's also baseless, but we have to respond formally. There will be a hearing. You'll need to appear before a judge. When? Quote, 3 weeks. December 15th. I closed my eyes. A courtroom, my son testifying against me, lawyers arguing over whether I was competent to control my own life. "I can't believe it's come to this," I said. "Believe it. But Renate, we're going to win." I've seen cases like this before. When the evidence is reviewed objectively, when there's no actual medical basis for the claim, judges see through it. They don't like being used to settle family disputes or facilitate financial abuse. What do I need to do? Quote, "Live your life normally. Keep records of everything. Every bill you pay, every appointment you keep, every decision you make. We want to show a pattern of completely normal, competent behavior. And stay away from them. Don't engage, don't respond to calls or messages. Everything goes through me now." After he hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold between my hands. December 15th, 3 weeks to wait. 3 weeks of knowing my son was building a case against me. 3 weeks of wondering if a judge might actually believe I was incompetent. 3 weeks to prove I deserved to control my own life. The 3 weeks passed in a strange blur. I kept meticulous records like Mr. Weber suggested. Receipts, appointment confirmations, a journal of daily activities. I met with Eleanor twice a week. I called Diana in Hamburg every few days. I volunteered at the library on Tuesdays, organizing book donations. I lived deliberately, consciously, building a life that proved I was present and capable. But underneath the routine, fear hummed like a persistent note. What if the judge believed them? What if Max stood up in that courtroom and told some convincing story about a confused, paranoid mother, and they believed him? What if I lost everything? Not just my relationship with my son, but my autonomy, my home, my right to make my own choices? On December 14th, the day before the hearing, Diana called. "I'm coming," she said. "Klaus and we're driving down tonight. We'll be there in the morning." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You're my sister, and that nephew of mine needs to see that you're not alone in this." I started to cry then, standing in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, tears running hot down my face. "Thank you," I whispered. "Otto would have done this for me," she said simply. "So I do it for you." The courthouse was gray stone and tall windows, imposing in the winter morning light. Diana and Klaus flanked me as we walked up the steps, Diana's hand firm on my arm. Mr. Weber met us in the lobby, briefcase in hand, wearing the same steady expression that had reassured me through every meeting. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said honestly, "but let's do this anyway." Quote, "The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, a judge's bench, rows of seats. Max and Lena sat on one side with their lawyer. Not Mr. Fisher this time, but a woman in a sharp navy suit who looked expensive. Dr. Schneider sat behind them. Max wouldn't look at me. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled back in a bun. Judge Hoffman, according to the nameplate on her bench. She studied the papers in front of her, then looked up. "This is a petition for guardianship," she said, her voice crisp and clear. "Filed by Max Richter on behalf of his mother, Renate Richter, alleging cognitive decline and inability to manage financial affairs. Mrs. Richter is represented by Mr. Weber and contests this petition. Let's proceed." The next hour was surreal. Max's lawyer presented their case. The sudden withdrawal of financial support, the security measures I'd installed, my refusal to speak with Dr. Schneider, the changed locks, the paranoid behavior. Dr. Schneider testified that while she hadn't been able to conduct a full evaluation, my refusal to cooperate was consistent with patterns seen in individuals experiencing cognitive decline who lack insight into their condition. Then Max testified. He sat in the witness chair looking earnest, wounded, concerned. He talked about how close we'd been, how I'd always been there for him, how he'd noticed changes after his father died, increasing isolation, emotional instability, irrational decisions. "She supported us financially for 3 years without any issue," he said. "Then suddenly, out of nowhere, she cut us off completely. Over something trivial. It was like she'd become a different person." "And what was this trivial matter?" Judge Hoffman asked. Max hesitated. "We got married at the courthouse. A small ceremony. She was upset she wasn't invited." "I see. And why wasn't she invited?" Quote, "It was a very intimate event. Just a few people. But not your mother. We thought she'd understand, but instead she became hostile, vindictive, started saying we only valued her for her money." Quote, "And did you value her for her money?" Quote. The question hung in the air. Max's lawyer objected, but Judge Hoffman waved her off. "Answer the question, Mr. Richter." "Of course not. She's my mother. I love her." "Then why are you here? Why this petition?" Quote, "Because I'm worried about her. She's alone. She's making poor decisions. She needs protection." "Protection from what?" Quote, Max faltered. From herself. From being taken advantage of." "Who's taking advantage of her?" Quote, "I don't know, but she could be. In her state." Judge Hoffman made a note and turned to Mr. Weber. "Your turn." Mr. Weber stood. He presented Dr. Hartman's evaluation. Every test, every assessment, all proving complete competence. He presented my bank records, showing decades of responsible financial management. He presented the police reports, documenting Max and Lena's harassment. Then he called me to testify. I walked to the witness chair on shaking legs. The room seemed too bright, too quiet. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Weber said gently, "tell the court why you stopped supporting your son financially." I looked at Max. He was staring at his hands. "Because I realized they didn't see me as a person," I said quietly, "only as a source of money. When they got married without inviting me, when Lena told me they only invited special people, I understood that I'd been supporting them for 3 years, and it didn't matter. I wasn't special, I was just convenient." "And the security measures you installed?" Quote, "Because 3 weeks after I stopped the payments, they showed up at my house with a lawyer trying to pressure me into signing over power of attorney. Then they came back with Dr. Schneider, trying to force an evaluation. I installed security because I needed to protect myself from harassment. From your own son. Yes, my voice broke. From my own son. Judge Hoffman leaned forward. Mrs. Richter, do you love your son? Quote. The question surprised me. I looked at Max again. This time, he met my eyes. Yes, I said. I do. I always will. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. And that's what this is, an attempt to take control of my life, my money, my home. Not because I need protection, but because they want access to an inheritance. That's not true, Lena burst out from her seat. Mrs. Richter? Judge Hoffman continued, ignoring the outburst. If I deny this petition, do you understand your son may never speak to you again? Quote, yes. Are you prepared for that? Quote, I thought about the question, really thought about it. Was I prepared to lose Max forever? I'm already alone, I said finally. The question is whether I'm alone by force or by choice. And I choose to be alone with my dignity intact, rather than controlled by people who see me as an obstacle to money. Quote, Judge Hoffman sat back. I've heard enough. She looked at the papers in front of her, then at Max, then at me. Petition denied, she said. Mrs. Richter has demonstrated complete mental competence. She manages her finances responsibly, maintains her property, makes rational decisions, and has medical documentation supporting her capacity. Her decision to withdraw financial support from her adult son is not evidence of cognitive decline. It's evidence of appropriate boundary setting in response to exploitative behavior. Max's face went white. Furthermore, Judge Hoffman continued, her voice hardening, I find this petition to be not only baseless but concerning. Mr. Richter, you attempted to use the court system to gain control of your mother's finances after she refused to continue supporting you. That's elder financial abuse. If you or your wife approach Mrs. Richter again without her explicit consent, I will grant a restraining order without hesitation. Do you understand? Quote, Yes, Your Honor, Max said quietly. This hearing is concluded. Outside the courthouse, Diana hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. You did it, she whispered. You stood up for yourself. Klaus shook Mr. Weber's hand, thanking him profusely. Eleanor, who'd come to sit in the gallery, was wiping tears from her eyes. I watched Max and Lena walk to their car. He didn't look back. Not once. Are you all right? Diana asked, seeing my face. I don't know, I admitted. I won, but it doesn't feel like winning. Give it time, Eleanor said. Right now it just feels like loss. But later, maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually it will feel like freedom. That evening, back in my house, I sat in Otto's chair with a cup of tea and looked around the living room. The security panel blinked green. System armed. The new locks were solid. The house was quiet, empty, mine. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mom. It's Max. I need to say something. My heart lurched. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Another message came through. Can we talk? Please? Quote, I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding, the lawyer, the psychiatrist, the courtroom, the judge's words, elder financial abuse. Could we come back from this? Should we? I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. But I knew one thing. Whatever happened next, it would be on my terms. Not because I was angry or vengeful, but because I'd learned something crucial in these past months. I was worth protecting. Even from my own son. Especially from my own son. I set the phone down without responding. Maybe tomorrow I'd answer. Maybe next week. Maybe never. For now, I just sat in the quiet of my home, my safe, secure, protected home, and breathed. I'd survived. I'd stood up for myself. I'd walked into a courtroom and told the truth, and the truth had set me free. The phone buzzed again. And again. I picked up my tea and walked to the window, looking out at the winter evening. Snow was beginning to fall, soft and silent, covering everything in white. A new beginning, I thought. Or an ending. Or maybe both at once. Behind me, the phone kept buzzing, but I'd already made my choice. Would you have done what I did? Would you have stood up to your own child, even knowing you might lose them forever? Or would you have kept giving, kept sacrificing, kept hoping that love would be enough? I think about that question often now, and every time, I come back to the same answer. I did what I had to do. Not because it was easy, not because it didn't hurt, but because at 63 years old, I finally understood that loving someone doesn't mean disappearing for them. Tell me, what would you have done?